Hello again, everyone. I'm going to finish off Pittsburgh week with my look at the Pirates of the MLB. So, looking at the Pirates and talking about their players and stats, I'm going to look at last year's stats more than this year's because they're only about 14, 15 games into the season. So, it's really hard to give a definitive, look at how they're going to do this season when they've only played 15 games kind of thing. They're off to a 500 record. I think they might be a game or two below 500 after last night. They're in the middle of a series right now against the Cubs, who some people are taking to win the World Series this year after having many years of not being successful. People are taking possibly the Cubs to win the World Series this year. So that's a tough 4-game series they're in the middle of right now against the Cubs. So looking at their players, obviously I'll start with McCutchen because he's former NL All-Star and I think kind of the face of their franchise if you were to give a title to somebody. Last year, McCutchen had a 3.14 average with 25 home runs, 83 RBIs, as well as 18 stolen bases. He is 28 RBIs away from 500, so I'm going to predict that he gets that by, let's say, my birthday. My birthday is June 14th, so I think he'll reach 500 career RBIs by middle of June. Maybe even before that, maybe the end of May kind of thing, depending on how successful he could be in the next few weeks kind of thing. This season, obviously, he started off struggling a little bit. He's only got a 204 average right now, with 2 home runs and 10 RBIs. So he's still producing, which is good. Then I'm going to look at Harrison, the third baseman, who last year had a 315 average with 13 home runs, 52 RBIs, and 18 stolen bases. This year he's off to a 196 average with 2 home runs. So a lot of these guys that had great averages last year have had a slow start. Their averages are, hovering around the 200 range, and you'd rather these players have an average somewhere around the 275, 280 range kind of thing. But again, the season's early. These numbers are going to get better. Because when you've only had 15 games, if you go 1 for 4 every night, you'd have a 250 average, but there's going to be nights where you go 0 for 4, then there's going to be another night you go 2 for 5, and it's hard to really get a good grasp on their average and how they're producing when it's only this early in the season. Sterling Marte, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Hopefully I am. I apologize again in advance with some of these players' names. I am going to pronounce them wrong. That is going to happen, so I do apologize in advance for that. Last year he had a 291 average with 13 home runs, 56 RBIs, and 30 stolen bases. This year he's got a 224 average with 5 home runs and 12 RBIs. So he's already almost halfway to his home run total of last year, and we're only 15 games into the season. So clearly he's found a power swing, which is great. Hopefully he can keep that up. And his 224 average, like I said, will get better. That's still a solid average for this start of the season. Second baseman Walker, 271 average last year with 23 home runs and 76 RBIs. He started off with a 241 average this season, so we'll see him get better as well for sure. Alvarez, last year 231 average, 18 home runs, 56 RBIs. This year he started off with a 234 average, 4 home runs, and 8 RBIs, so he's on pace to what he did last year, which is solid. Any guy that can hit around the 20 home run plateau and have an average at 230, like I said, not the greatest average, but producing is good as well. So that's sometimes you'll take a guy who's going to hit 30 home runs and only have a 225 average. You'll take that trade-off kind of thing. If you're not going to be hitting home runs and you're not going to be producing, then obviously you're going to want to have a higher average kind of thing. But managers and management and managers and GMs and owners and all that kind of stuff are going to take a 30 home run guy who only has a 225 average any day, because you're going to have other guys on your team that aren't home run guys, but they get on base a lot and they get 280 averages, but they're your single guys that can run out infield singles and that kind of stuff. So you're okay with having your power guys having lower averages. Shortstop Mercer, 255 average last year with 12 home runs, 55 RBIs. Gregory Polanco, 235 average last year with 7 home runs, 33 RBIs, 14 stolen bases in just 89 games. So we'll see if he gets a full season in. Like I said, last year he just played about half a season and he had solid numbers. He started off this season with a 268 average, so he's definitely earning playing time and deserves to be on the field for sure. Some of the players they brought in, Rodriguez, who's a second baseman, 211 average last year, 12 home runs, 41 RBIs in 96 games with the Rays. Corey Hart, who's an outfielder, first baseman, kind of utility player. Last year had a 203 average with 6 home runs and 21 RBIs in 68 games with Seattle. And then they also brought in Cervelli. Obviously, Russell Martin, a big loss, went and signed with the Jays. Last year he had a 290 average with 11 home runs and 67 RBIs. So you got to go and find a catcher who can not necessarily to replace Russell Martin because Cervelli does not have the power numbers that Martin does, but is a good veteran guy to have on your lineup. A guy who comes from a winning mentality with the Yankees, and a guy that can fill a good catcher role for your team. Last year, Cervelli had a 3.01 average with 2 home runs and 13 RBIs in just 49 games with the Yankees. So a guy who has a 300 average deserves some playing time, and he's going to get it in Pittsburgh. So we'll see what he can do with that. That's kind of their field and what's going to happen. They also have signed the shortstop Young-Hoo Kang, who's come over. So this is his first year in the major leagues. Obviously, he's had success in other leagues, and now he's got an opportunity to play in the major leagues. So we'll see what he can do for the team. So those are the position players and kind of where they're at, looking at last year and how they started off this year, and keep an eye on McCutchen getting the 500 RBI total. Looking at their starting pitching staff, they got some solid veterans in there in Liriano and Burnett. Last year, 3.38 ERA for Liriano, 7-10. Burnett had a 4.59 ERA, 8-18 record, 119 strikeouts to 213.2 innings pitched with the Phillies. So Burnett is obviously a veteran that can still get a lot of Ks, 200 plus innings pitched, and had a solid ERA last year. You know, any ERA, the 4.59, I shouldn't say it was a solid ERA. It is a little elevated, and his record doesn't show that he had a 190 strikeout season with 213.2 innings pitched. So again, he's a veteran guy. He's not going to go out and be a 19-20 game winner for you, but he's going to get the innings. And every starting rotation needs one or two guys that aren't necessarily going to be your guys that are going to push to get 20 wins across in the season, but they're going to go 10-8 or 12-10 or something like that, but they're going to give you the 200 plus innings, and that's what keeps your bullpen fresh. Come August and September, those are the guys that are going to be beneficial to your team. Looking at Liriano, like I said, last year, 3.38 ERA, 7-10 record. He had 175 strikeouts to 162.1 innings pitched. So you have two veterans there who are strikeout per inning caliber guys, and it's important to have those guys on your team. Cole, 3.65 ERA last year with a 11-5 record, 138 strikeouts, 138 innings pitched. So there's another guy that's a strikeout per inning pitcher. Locke last year, 3.91 ERA, 7-6 record, 89 strikeouts to 131 innings pitched, and then rounding out starting rotation, you have Worley, who last year had a 2.85 ERA, 8-4 record, 79 strikeouts to 110.2 innings pitched. So looking at that beginning of your rotation, you got your veterans in Burnett and Liriano, you got Cole, and then you got Locke and Worley to round out that. You got three guys that can be strikeout per inning pitchers, and with Burnett and Liriano, you have two veteran starters that can give you 200 plus innings. Looking at their closer in Melancon, last year he had a 1.90 ERA, 3-5 record with 33 saves, and then he had 71 strikeouts to 71 innings pitched. So if you can get a closer that can have an ERA under 2 and is a strikeout per inning closer, that's important, especially playing in the Central with the other teams in that division. You got the Cubs, Reds, Brewers, and Cardinals. So it's going to be a tough division to try to get that division title. It's going to be even harder to get the wild card spot, kind of thing. Especially, like I said earlier, with people kind of thinking the Cubs might finally make it to the World Series. Cardinals are still a threat. The Reds and Brewers are teams, all five of these teams are definitely playoff caliber teams and have the potential to get there. We'll just see what kind of happens as the season goes on. Again, it's still early, so we'll see if these guys can improve. They got the pitching staff that can get them to the playoffs. They got the stars that can get them to the playoffs. They got the power, they got the speed, they got all elements in their starting lineup that can get them to the playoffs. So we'll see if that happens. I do think losing Volquez as a pitcher this past offseason last year, he had a 3.04 ERA, 13-7 record, 140 strikeouts to 192.2 innings pitched, is tough. I think that's a big loss. Getting Burnett back is a definite positive for sure. Veteran guy, veteran leadership in that starting rotation. But I think Volquez is a guy that will hurt them by not being on their team for sure. So that's my thoughts on the Pirates. The season's still early. We'll see what happens as the season continues. Tough division, like I said, with the Central. They got the talent to get to the playoffs. We'll see what happens. So good luck to the Pirates as they continue on the season, as the month of April finishes off, get into May and get on a winning streak. We'll see what happens. Thank you again all for watching. Again, I do appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at gham614, and I will be talking to you next week. I'm going to stop off in Milwaukee, so I'll be able to talk about the Brewers as well as the Bucks. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.